Hi, welcome to the Pursuit of Truth. So another one about the Israel-Hamas war. From what I've seen on Sky News, this is the third to the fourth week. Some people are saying the ground invasion could last 3 months, estimating that 30 to 40,000 Palestinians may be killed in that time, going on the figures that they have now, supplied by Hamas. Of course, Hamas may be I don't know where anyone in the war, whether it's Israel, Hamas, or even the West, can be trusted with giving figures, and whether they're actual really counting bodies or just estimating, I don't know. In these situations, these figures tend to go up and down, and as we know, the first casualty of war is truth. But they're saying like there's 8,000 plus Palestinians already killed. We don't know how many of those are Hamas and how many of them are innocent civilians, and they're saying at least 3,000 of that 8,000 are children, which of course, assuming they're under 16, they're not likely to be Hamas members. I don't know how it's going to stop this. The problem is a lot of people, it's the same things. That's why I'm not making many of these now, because it's the same, rhetoric that we're getting from either side. People that support war, people that are against war, people that are pro-Israel, people that are pro-Palestine. The media could fill every 24 hours with the arguments both back and forth, and either side can make legitimacy of, I'm not talking about Hamas making legitimacy, I'm talking about Palestinians making legitimacy of this, what's happening to them currently. And Israel can go back to the 7th of October to legitimise what they're doing. People talking about international law. No one, whoever runs international law, I guess because it's bureaucratic, it's going to take time. I mean, already 8,000 people have died. People are saying international law has already been broken, and yet those people, people are still dying. Ceasefires, pauses, people arguing over words, people arguing over what's in statements and whether they can back them. People, there's it's just a lot of it, and I guess as it's people changing their minds as they go further through, but it's just. The thing is that what's really happening here is the suffering of innocent people, Israeli and Palestinian, Israeli hostages that are being kept by Hamas. That they're putting out videos now of them, and then they're saying that in strikes that Israel are doing that they're being killed. Obviously, they're trying to. They want Israel to stop so that they can maybe regroup or escape or whatever, or just live a little bit longer. I don't know, and that's why they're putting that out, and that may well be happening, or it may well not be. Who knows? We can't trust anyone in war to tell the truth, and of course anyone who beheads people or rapes people or burns them alive, or even from the Israeli point of view, and obviously I'm a pacifist, I don't believe in war. I mean, I know there may be reasons for it, but killing of human beings, I don't like the idea of that. So even soldiers do that, and I don't know where I was going with that statement now, but it's just death from all sides, and civilians and innocent people are suffering. And now we're hearing more about the massacre. I haven't actually seen the footage because the Sky don't actually show it, and I'm a bit reticent to look for it. I'm sure it is out there. I know people talk about having seen these Hamas videos and body cam stuff, and it being, I don't think I want to see it because then you can't unsee it, but they really should put it on the news so that we can be forced to see the horrors that happened on the 7th of October, and because that can obviously give understanding of why this war's happening. But from a point of view of humanity, it's just humans killing humans and all this stuff going on in plain sight. Hitting of hospitals, hitting of refugee camps. So here's some few clips. I'll play now.
And senior Labour politicians like Sadiq Khan, the London Mayor, Andy Burnham, the Greater Manchester Mayor, and Anas Sarwar, the Labour's leader in Scotland. Now, there are signs that Sir Keir's authority, his backing for Rishi Sunak, his opposition to a ceasefire, signs of rumblings of discontent inside the shadow cabinet. Shabana Mahmood has written a letter to her constituents, very sympathetic to those pleas from Muslims to end what's called she's called collective punishment of the Palestinian civilians in Gaza. Now, it's also reported that Shabana Mahmood and indeed the ultra-loyalist Wes Streeting are among those shadow cabinet members who have expressed their concern to Sir Keir. So a revolt is growing. It's not a full-blown revolt as yet, but certainly the dissent is growing, and it's rising up the party, perhaps now reaching to inside the shadow cabinet.
Okay, John, thank you very much indeed. Now, back to Gaza, and phone lines and internet connections are slowly returning to the Gaza Strip after more than a day of no communications at all. Connectivity was cut on Friday night as Israel intensified its operations in the enclave, and thousands of families are waiting for news of loved ones stuck in the region. Well, joining me now is Dr. Ahmed Abu Fool, a surgeon from Birmingham. 16 members of his family are trapped in Gaza, including his elderly parents and 8 children, one of them a baby just 4 years old. Well, thank you for being with us. And I just wonder, have you managed to regain contact with them now that some communications, we understand, are being restored?
Yes, I have. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak to you today. Yes, I have. We had a terrible 36 hours of loss of contact and hearing horrible news and intensified bombardments, and it was the worst 36 hours that we have ever experienced. But yes, luckily we managed to speak to them this morning, and they are alive and they are unharmed, thankfully.
And do they describe the kind of conditions that they are living in and the conditions that surround them?
Yes, absolutely. So it's a multifaceted kind of crisis for my family and for the rest of the families in Gaza Strip, I assume. It's first is for safety, and there are reported lots of bombardments in the areas around. It's coming. This is how they described it, coming closer to them. This is the fifth area for shelter that they had to seek, running from bombardments. And now, they say if anything happens around them, they will not be able to evacuate, because that's the last resort. There are 16 members, and I don't think they will manage to find anywhere else to go. That's one of the unknown questions. What if? And I hope they never get into that situation, but it's something that is in the back of our minds. They also describe having difficulty in getting drinking water. Now they ran out of all their supplies of drinking water, so they have to refill every day. They have to walk. 2 of my brothers have to walk on foot for around half an hour to go and get some drinking water. That's a very, very, very risky journey, because they are exposed to then outside. Anything can happen outside and inside. There's no safe area in Gaza. It's very, very terrible conditions they are in.
Yeah, extremely difficult it sounds. Just to be clear, do they have British passports so that if there was a chance to get foreign nationals out, they could do so? Is that the situation that they are in?
Yes, majority of them, they are British nationals, and all spouses are British nationals, and they have registered with the Foreign Office when they started that portal to register residents in Gaza Strip. That's from day 3 of the war, and from then I think there's minimal kind of update. There's, honestly speaking, frankly, there's a growing frustration among them of what's happening. They don't know what's holding the evacuation. Where is it holding? They don't know. I'm sure that the Foreign Office is trying to do their best. I don't think there's enough communication to update them of what's happening or why they're staying there or what might happen. And for us as well, when we lost contact with them, they lost contact with everything, with the outside world. So if there was an evacuation plan, they will not be able to know about it. And that was our main worry. And I don't think, and I hope the Foreign Office is preparing for such eventuality if that happens again. That would be very difficult.
Yeah, well, it will be very difficult. The situation there is very serious because of this whole idea of, there's no ceasefire, there's no humanitarian pause, and that is needed to get aid in and presumably to get foreign nationals out. Just very briefly, 30 seconds if you could. I mean, this prospect now of a ground operation going on, that must be very worrying for you.
Yes, it's extremely worrying because we know that in such war there will be lots of collateral damage and civilian death. And that's the main thing. For me, I'm thinking of my family and the rest. I hope that civilian casualties is reduced, and I don't want my family to be a collateral loss. That's the main thing. And I know in these situations there's no guarantee. Anything can happen.
Okay, well, Doctor, we hope that they manage to get out sometime very soon. And thank you very much for coming on the programme. Thank you.
And this one, I think, was on, that was Sunday.
Prime Minister being...
Sunday now, it's what is it, Wednesday. And now they have opened the border for foreign nationals to cross to Egypt. I guess that's because recently there were claims that maybe if Israel didn't do that, they could be culpable for keeping them hostage by refusing to let them leave. That's what I heard, so I don't know if that's why that's happened now. I don't know if these are all going to be in the right order. This one is also Sunday.
How long it's going to take to return to normal here. Maybe it never will. It'll certainly not be the same. Well, it says a ground invasion is just different to ones that we've seen in the past. We've heard small arms fire. We've seen tanks manoeuvring, of course, as attacks from the sky from jets. What they intend to do is move forward into the major cities behind here that are going to be reduced to rubble. And then, of course, they intend to go in and underground. That is going to be a long and hard operation. Israel knows much of the world believes its determination to avenge the Hamas October the 7th attack will simply kill too many civilians. But with the support of countries like the United States and the UK, it will carry on regardless. Soldiers on the ground, jets in the air, and the artillery on the wings. Stuart Ramsey, Sky News, Southern Israel.
Well, the Palestinian Red Crescent says it has been told by Israel to evacuate a key hospital in Gaza City, prompting deep concern from the World Health Organization. Staff at the Al-Quds facility in Gaza City say it would be impossible to move its 400 patients, and that around 14,000 civilians are also sheltering there. Across the territory, hospitals are struggling to cope, with the doctor telling Sky News the situation is catastrophic and disastrous. A warning, Diana Magnay's report has some distressing images.
Every day, every moment, the mayhem of Gaza's operating theatres. A young man badly injured, losing a lot of blood. His brother waits outside in the agony of not knowing if he'll make it or not. Too much for these little ones, who've had to see so much pain already these past 3 weeks. Then suddenly another commotion. A tiny bundle rushed in, a little baby, his face grey from the dust, one leg ripped off. And for this level of emergency, there is nothing like the right medicines or equipment to cope.
Like the equipment I use now, nothing came from the international organization. Whatever medicine I used, whatever equipment I use now to save this young male life is not coming with the AIDS. We're working with very old machines, very old equipment, very limited amount of medication, and this is like a catastrophic and disastrous situation.
Israel says Hamas are basing themselves in and beneath the Strip's major hospitals, a claim that we can't verify. But what we do know is that tens of thousands of civilians are seeking shelter in hospitals, which Israel is demanding that they evacuate. 2 warnings issued this Sunday to the Al-Quds hospital in Gaza City.
We don't have the means to evacuate Al-Quds hospital. We have over 400 patients who are inside the hospital. Many of them are in the intensive care unit. Evacuating them means killing them. We have inside our hospital over 14,000 civilians who are internally displaced due to continuous bombardment that is taking place all over Gaza.
Aid continues to trickle through, but it is still nowhere near enough. And the UN is reporting raids on its aid warehouses, a worrying sign as the effects of 3 weeks of blockade and bombardment make themselves felt. And the loss and the misery is never ending. Why is this happening to us? What have we done to the world? This woman screams. Everyone takes their revenge on us. May God take our revenge on European countries and on Israel, she says. It is her sister in the shroud, a healthcare worker at a hospital in the south, 6 months pregnant, killed with her son and another family who'd fled the north, just as Israel had told them to. Israel may not be targeting civilians, but it is still killing so many of them. And even if it manages somehow to wipe out Hamas and rescue the hostages, and the guns and the rockets and the bombs fall silent, the hate here will continue to burn. Diana Magnay, Sky News.
Well, this evening, the International Criminal Court's chief prosecutor has warned that stopping the flow of aid to Gaza could constitute a war crime. Our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle, is here with me now. I mean, Israel not signed up to the ICC, but increased pressure on them nevertheless.
Yeah, I think so. The head of the ICC is in Egypt at the Rafah crossing.
Whoa. The ICC is the International Criminal Court, and my understanding is they're the only ones that could issue, investigate about war crimes and breaking of an international Geneva Convention. Is that correct? That's my understanding. So if Israel aren't signed up to it, then that means even if they are found, guilty by media of committing international crimes, nothing could be done about it because there would be no process that they're assigned to. I wonder why they're not signed to the ICC. Maybe that explains why what's happening is happening. I don't know. Unfortunately, they don't quiz that.
International Criminal Court's chief prosecutor has warned that stopping the flow of aid to Gaza could constitute a war crime. Our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle, is here with me now. I mean, Israel not signed up to the ICC, but increased pressure on them nevertheless.
Yeah, I think so. The head of the ICC is in Egypt at the Rafah crossing and wants to try and get into Gaza. And he is saying that, in his opinion, if Israel stops the requisite aid getting into Gaza, then that could constitute a war crime. But as you rightly point out, Israel is not a signatory of the Rome Statute of the ICC. Another interesting development tonight is that the defense minister in Israel, Yoav Gallant, has been visiting the families of those people taken hostage. That's after Benjamin Netanyahu visited them in the last 24 hours as well. And he said a couple of things. He said that if there was, in his opinion, a credible deal to release all of the hostages in Gaza for all of the Palestinian prisoners being held by Israel, then they would do it. But he does not believe that's credible. And it's his opinion that the best way of getting the hostages out is not via diplomacy, but to put military pressure on Hamas. And that is what we're seeing. That's the Israeli tactic right now, is to try and grind Hamas into the ground so that they, in the Israelis' hope, release the hostages and virtually come out surrendering.
Well, I don't know if has that ever been proven to work. This is the kind of thing that is the different levels that people look at things. People at high level not looking at human feeling and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't make sense to me. The Qatari negotiator was talking about, they expect, all of them to be released. And I mean, I know that, Hamas and Qatar could, that there's links that they say there's links, and, they could just be saying that, etc., to just stop the invasion into Gaza. But nevertheless, they were releasing them, and they could have waited a little bit longer to see if maybe more came out. This seems a very risky process of bombing, where you think Hamas are, because I assume where Hamas are is where the hostages may be, and they keep releasing information saying that they're, that when they attack Hamas, they've attacked the hostages as well. I don't know, it just seems a bit heavy-handed to sort of think that going in there military, I suppose if they get in there, then they could find the Hamas people and shoot them and then get the hostages if they have intelligence of where they may be. That, I guess that's possible, but I would have thought, if you think about it in, say, a normal street where it may happen and police are present, they usually hold off before they go in until they've exhausted the negotiation. And it only seemed like it was just starting with 4 people coming out, and Qatar talking about, they're thinking there's going to be a big breakthrough soon. And, talking about if they got a ceasefire, then they think they'll all be released. I mean, I know that's probably not going to be true, but I don't know. What do I know?
And that tells us a lot about the two dynamics we've heard over the last couple of days. The diplomatic front and the Israeli military front. And it's the Israeli opinion that you go in hard and you basically force Hamas to release the hostages.
Okay, Alistair, thanks very much indeed. Now, the head of Britain's biggest police force, Sir Mark Rowley, has told Sky News his officers will be ruthless in enforcing the law when it comes to protests. His comments come a day after tens of thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters marched through central London. It passed off largely peacefully, although 5 people have now been charged with offences including racist abuse and the assault of a police officer. Crime correspondent Martin Brunt has this report.
Yeah, so this is about protests. It's a bit concerning, some of the protesters with carrying around, that were wearing T-shirts with the people that paraglided in. I heard that. I don't understand some people. What do they think? Do they think that, I mean, if you're there to help the Palestinians, that's not helping the Palestinians by supporting murderers. And then, of course, there was, I don't know, have it here, there was a story in, where was it? In Russia, where that was very scary, seeing a mob of people breaking through the airport, breaking through security doors. I don't know what they were planning to do, thinking that there were some Israelis coming on a plane. That was very scary to see that. That was, what were they planning to do? They looked like just ordinary people. Were they planning on getting these people off a plane, beating them up, doing what to them? I mean, that was extremely scary to see that, a mob of people. It looked like hundreds of people that were planning on taking, the law into their own hands. But to see that so many galvanized was very scary. And yeah, this is like where we are now. It seems like it's very dangerous now if you're a Muslim or Israeli or Jewish or Palestinian. You know, that is, you know, we know they've been talking about hate crimes even in the UK going up for both Jewish and Muslim people. And I don't know, I just don't understand people. I don't understand humans, to be honest, anymore. They're just like the holding on to hate, the, you know, doing bad and hoping for good. You know, you can't do bad on bad or bad because of bad, because I just don't get it. It just, I don't get it. I mean, that just was very scary. I mean, I'd be very scared if I was Jewish coming in on a plane now into Russia, thinking that there could be a mob there waiting for you to do what to you. It just, you know, I don't know, that's just... Anyway, here's the next one.
Good evening from Jerusalem. Israel's Prime Minister said tonight that this is a time for war, as he rejected any possibility of a ceasefire. Benjamin Netanyahu was speaking as his forces moved further into Gaza. The Israeli military said its soldiers had rescued one of their own from Hamas detention, but the families of 3 more hostages were forced to see their loved ones appear in a video filmed by Hamas. Much of the military action since Israeli troops entered Gaza late last week has been focused on the north, where Israel warned Gazans to evacuate. Israeli forces have entered at multiple points, with the Institute for the Study of War reporting clearing operations in the areas shown in purple in the far north of the territory. But today, Sky News has also verified footage of an IDF tank firing at a car on the Salah al-Din main road, which connects the north and south. There are also increasing concerns about hospitals being targeted. All the hospitals operating in northern Gaza have received evacuation orders from Israel. That's according to the UN's Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, including Al-Shifa and Al-Quds Hospital. Later we'll hear an appeal from one British citizen trapped on the ground in Gaza. But first this evening, our chief correspondent Stuart Ramsey's report on the Israeli advance, and a warning here, it includes pictures of that moment a tank opens fire on a car.
Deep inside Gaza now, Israeli troops taking over houses and planning movements. Outside, these Israeli Defense Force pictures showed tanks and armoured personnel carriers manoeuvring through Gaza. This is a proper invasion and bombing campaign that appears to be growing by the day. The Israeli government wants this to be seen home and abroad, but there are pictures less likely to be approved by the IDF as its campaign continues. This terrifying video is captured by a Gaza journalist on the main road heading south from Gaza City. The car ahead hasn't seen there is a tank on the right. The journalist films as the car suddenly attempts to turn. The tank fires. The journalists say an entire family was killed. In a panic, they rush to get away. Other cars are travelling towards the tank. They lean out of the car, shouting for everyone to turn back. There is the sound of another tank round. Some stop, others do not. The road south is now blocked. The Israeli Prime Minister says there will be no let-up.
Calls for a ceasefire are calls for Israel to surrender to Hamas, to surrender to terrorism, to surrender to barbarism. That will not happen. Ladies and gentlemen, the Bible says that there is a time for peace and a time for war. This is a time for war.
The aerial onslaught on Gaza is quite staggering in its intensity. IDF video shows building after building being destroyed. And eyewitnesses have told Sky News that the north is now cut off from the relative safety of the south. By splitting Gaza in half, the Israeli Defense Forces can now focus their attention exclusively on the Hamas positions in the north, in Gaza City, and of course the tunnels beneath the city. But this maneuver does raise questions about the safety of civilians, thousands of whom have stayed behind or have even returned. Hundreds of thousands have moved south, many to the city of Khan Yunis. It has been attacked, but it's in better shape than towns to the north. With his family, Abdul Nasser Lajkar has made it from Gaza City. He says he had no choice.
It doesn't matter if you're in Gaza or Khan Yunis or anywhere else. There's no safe place. There's no place that is immune from the bombing. Gaza is being bombed, Nusrat's being bombed, Khan Yunis is being bombed. That's why we're sitting on the street.
Showing us shrapnel marks on his car, he says the journey south was horrendous as Israel attacked.
We saw a lot of destruction. They hit a car in front of us and we saw legs and hands on top of the car. They all became like when you slaughter an animal, how you cut them up into pieces. That's what happened to the occupants of the car. We got out of our car and we could not comprehend what we were seeing.
The Israeli military is determined to succeed. Hamas and its militias are determined to fight. Civilians are stuck. There is nowhere to run and nowhere to hide in Gaza. Stuart Ramsey, Sky News in southern Israel.
Well, as Israeli troops and armour continue to move into Gaza, one Israeli soldier is out tonight. Private Ori Magadish was freed after a ground operation, that's according to the Israeli Defense Force, while she recovers with her family. A video of 3 more hostages has been released by Hamas. A friend of one of them told Sky News she looked sad, but seeing her made them hopeful. Cordelia Lynch reports now from Israel.
Back in the arms of her grandmother, Private Uri Magadish, freed by Israeli troops in a ground operation. It is, though, a pendulum of torment, and it swung again with a video released by Hamas showing 3 hostages, one taking aim at Israel's Prime Minister. He called it cruel propaganda. For Cherie, a friend of Elena Tripanov, it is tempered relief.
So she didn't speak. She was on the right side. You can tell that she's sad, which is to be expected, but she looks healthy. So we're hopeful.
There are the mechanics of war and diplomacy, but here it's souls they once celebrated.
They are beloved grandmother, fathers, sisters, and children. Real people with beating hearts waiting to be free.
Some are waiting for accountability.
Do you think Benjamin Netanyahu bears some responsibility?
No doubt, no doubt. There are many people in his government that for them peace is not first priority.
This square is home to hope and despair, faith and frustration. It is evidence, 3 weeks on, of the nuance that still exists, but is perhaps increasingly being lost in the fault lines of fury.
The leadership also needs to try and stop any conflict erupting internally.
How much responsibility do you think the Prime Minister needs to personally accept for the lapse in security that led to the October the 7th attacks? And do you acknowledge that the threat from Hamas was downplayed?
Everybody's going to ask a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions myself, and everybody's going to have to give a lot of answers. But I think to actually have that conversation now is not going to help us prosecute the war.
As they strategize, Shani Luke's family mourns, paraded semi-naked on the back of a truck, now confirmed dead by the discovery of her skull. The awful fate of one captive and a government under pressure to rescue many more.
And Cordelia is with me now. You attended the Netanyahu news conference and he was pretty clear, no ceasefire.
Yeah, I think it was very striking, both in his demeanour and in his language. There was defiance there, rejecting this notion of a ceasefire, something that Hamas has said, if it is given, then they will look to release those hostages. So I think some of Netanyahu's words there will cause concern amongst some of the families that I've spoken to who are still holding vigil in Tel Aviv, desperate, of course, to bring their loved ones home. I think what we hear from the words he's using, invoking the Bible and talking about this sort of victory against barbarism, rejecting the idea that he will resign, and also imploring others to take on this sort of axis of evil between Iran and Hamas, as he describes it. I think he's trying to make clear to the global community he's not going to be lectured by anyone. We've heard a lot of discussion around these kind of backroom talks with America, clearly a lot of hope and expectation in the international community. They will be a moderating voice, and I was reassured by his team that he is speaking regularly, every other day in fact, to Joe Biden. There could, though, Mark, still be room for a pause, a kind of brief cessation in hostilities, and I think that is what some of the families are holding out hope for, that might give them some room, some scope to bring their loved ones back, but no guarantees. And I think he came out on the back of the news of a freed hostage today, wanting to tell everyone he's not willing to back down.
Okay, Claudia, thanks very much indeed. Now, the mob which descended on a Russian airport saying they were searching for Jews were inspired by Western agents based in Ukraine, President Putin claimed today. One rabbi and critic, though, told Sky News the actions of Russia's leader, including hosting a delegation from Hamas, could have been seen as a sign that a hunting season was now on. Our Moscow correspondent Diana Magnay has this report.
It is a terrifying scene, an anti-Jewish pogrom in the land where that word came from. A mob rushing through an airport in Dagestan in Russia's North Caucasus after a plane touched down from Tel Aviv. Bursting their way through airport control, they say they're looking for Jews. Where are they? They yell. Not here, they're told. And so they pour out onto the airport tarmac. The passengers disembarking, unsure what to do or what's happening. Quickly, everyone back on board, the steward says. This is not a good look for Vladimir Putin and his proclamations of order or of a multi-faith, multi-ethnic state. And no surprises here, he was quick to blame the West.
The events in Makhachkala last night were inspired, among other things, through social networks, not least from the territory of Ukraine by the hands of agents of Western intelligence services.
Vladimir Putin has hedged his bets around the current crisis in the Middle East. Critics point to rising anti-Semitism, which they say is state-led.
Last week, the Russian Foreign Ministry received on a high-level Hamas delegation. You also see President Putin meeting with religious leaders in Russia, and he's talking about the Middle East and the war, and he does not condemn the massacre by Hamas. So this could have been also seen as a sign by some interested parties that hunting season against the Jews is on.
Dagestan is predominantly Muslim and historically restive. There is a small Jewish community, though, which has lived here in peace for over 1,000 years. And now they are looking to leave. Diana Magnay, Sky News.
This is really worrying because, I didn't live through the Second World War, but obviously at school we did history of the Second World War and the Holocaust and Nazis and etc. And obviously I've seen many films and documentaries over the years, but it worries me that this could have been the type of things that started in the 1930s in Germany and Europe, that led to, the the person of Hitler and the Nazis coming about, that it grew from these types of events, and it seems like history is repeating itself. It looks like, like that saying, the genie's out of the bottle. It looks very worrying, the times that could be coming now if this is sorted out. My worry is also that for future generations, seeing how Israel have tackled war in such a fierce manner. I mean, I was saying about with Russia and Ukraine, why aren't Russia using the jets like America and the West did in Iraq and Afghanistan to pummel it like they did with Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan? And we're seeing that now in Israel, and I feel that they've, as they keep mentioning when journalists sort of try to pull them apart on how they're dealing with this war, that they saw, the war in Iraq and Afghanistan and by America and the West, and that's given them, that, they can do it, so we can do it. And now when people see this, of, the siege and all that kind of stuff, then other countries, including the West, will then feel like, well, now we can do it because we've seen other people do it, and people have swallowed it and accepted it. Yeah, and there may be protests. There was 1 million people that protest in the Iraq and Afghanistan war, but nothing got done. Nothing got changed. Those people, those stoic leaders, carried on their campaigns. It doesn't matter. We believe we're in a democracy where we vote for these people and we have the power of the people, but we don't. Because even when we don't like something, we can only do something every 4 or 5 years, and that's voting out a party, and much of the parties are all aligned anyway, so we don't really have a say. But it's just very worrying that the times we're coming into now, seeing this footage of this mob, I would be terrified if I was, Jewish, terrified to think that, this is coming back again. I don't know. Why do humans do this? Even, I know I talk about, we need to remember we're all humans and not segregate ourselves and all this kind of the tags we put on and all this stuff. But even if we do live in the system that we live in, then there's no need for these things that are going on. Why do we lose our humanity?
These have been sanctioned by their parties tonight over their views on the war between Israel and Hamas. A Conservative MP was sacked after calling for a permanent break in hostilities, and a Labour MP has been suspended over comments he made at a pro-Palestine rally. Deputy Political Editor Sam Coates is at Westminster. Good evening, Sam. So this conflict leading to considerable strains in politics at home.
That's right, Mark. It has been an important day here in Westminster because we're seeing the first proper pressure on that cross-party consensus that we've had for the last 3 or so weeks behind the position on Israel and Hamas. Earlier today, the Prime Minister sacked one of the most junior members of his government, Paul Bristow, after he called for a permanent ceasefire. Rishi Sunak has judged that that is incompatible with Britain standing shoulder to shoulder with Israel. But Keir Starmer is taking a slightly different approach. He too believes that a permanent ceasefire is the wrong course of action, but he has decided to leave in their jobs the dozen or so frontbenchers in the Labour Party who have also publicly called for a ceasefire. Instead, the Labour leader has decided to draw the line in a different place. Tonight, he suspended the whip from a left-wing Labour MP, Andy MacDonald, after MacDonald on Saturday used the phrase "the river to the sea" at a protest. Now, the Labour leaders team see just the use of that phrase as something that upsets the Jewish community, doesn't want to unpick some of the hard work that he's done combating anti-Semitism. But Andy MacDonald, quite clear that if you read the whole sentence that he said, he was calling for peace, and he says there's no other way of reading what he said. And there's a big backlash on the right, on the left of the Labour Party tonight about the decision to suspend the whip. There is difficulties for the Labour Party everywhere. Earlier today, Home Secretary Suella Braverman, she talked about hate marches, those weekly Palestinian marches. Labour responding to that no doubt provocative act, talking simply about careless rhetoric. Is this pragmatism from the Labour Party? Is it weakness? It all depends on whether Keir Starmer can hold the line in the coming days. We shall see.
Hey, just listening to this more, just the messiness of humanity. You know, like Swerve Braverman calling them hate marches. Just seems so, just because these are people that are, most of them probably pacifists, some of them are most of them also pro-Palestine, in the sense that they want two states, they want people to live together in peace, they don't want war, they don't support Hamas. Yeah, there are going to be a few of them that do, because they probably think that they're the only people that are fighting Israel because the West have given up. But, obviously that doesn't justify it. But what I mean is, hate marches, I mean, in a country where we're meant to be democratic and the right of protest is part of our freedoms, whether you like it or not, but then to use such a term, I mean, and just like people getting sacked for questioning the government, it's very authoritarian, which we criticise Russia and China for being, and what does this say about, it's like we're coming towards that way. This is like straight out of a George Orwell novel.
Okay, Sam, thanks very much indeed. Well, as the war goes on, the situation gets increasingly desperate for the people living in Gaza. As we've heard, Israel has repeatedly called for residents to head south to what they describe as safe zones. North of England correspondent Inzamam Rashid has been speaking to a British teacher trapped inside Gaza who just wants to get out.
Every single day we are bombarded with bombs, and each one that we hear we think, who did that bomb kill?
Trapped inside Gaza with no idea when she'll even have a chance to leave. Zainab, a school teacher from Manchester, and 10 members of her family are pleading for help. Internet and phone signal is patchy, communication is limited, and she says even speaking to me like this is incredibly risky.
It's very scary. Everyone just tries to do their best to stay together. I don't want to go into detail over the phone, but it's devastating.
Like many foreign nationals stuck inside Gaza, Zainab and her family made their way to the Rafah border in hope it would open, but despite several attempts, they just can't get through. And with supplies now running out, the situation is desperate. The British authorities are in touch, but Zainab says their help is limited and frustrating. She shares these messages. Hi Zainab, how are you doing for food and water? Do you have any injuries? We don't have much, she says. We barely eat and drink as there's nothing left. Water is a luxury that we are not privy to. I'm really sorry. We are really trying to get people out of Gaza through the Rafah border, but we aren't hearing anything about when it will open, but we are doing our best to push them to open it. Back in Manchester, and Zainab's mum can only wait for her daughter to return.
My biggest fear is that they're going to get hurt or injured or worse, and the more time that passes, the bigger the likelihood that will happen.
The Foreign Office told us that the safety of British nationals remains our top priority. We are working closely with Egypt and Israel to ensure all British nationals who want to leave Gaza can. But Zainab is scared. She wants to be back with her family in the UK. Instead, she has no idea when she can escape life in a war zone. Inzamam Rashid, Sky News, Manchester.
And that is about it from Jerusalem tonight. Now back to Anna.
There's the last one. This is today.
Hello again, everybody. The family of Shani Lu, whose partially naked body was paraded through Gaza, have confirmed the 23-year-old has died. Her brother has spoken exclusively to Cordelia.
Shani Luke's brother wants to take us to the spot where they shared so many conversations.
I guess it's one of the hardest parts I will go through.
Where she made him laugh, feel, and think. The last time her family heard her voice was on the phone, trying to escape the Nova Music Festival.
She said, yes, we're going on the car. We're leaving right now, don't worry. And she didn't know where she's driving through. And what we understood, the terrorists were waiting in the roads. They are just waited in the roads for them to come out of the party and not them just go inside the party.
Then came a video that shook the world. Her body, face down and half naked in a pickup truck.
I never thought for myself I'm gonna be in contact with this type of video, seeing my sister in that brutal position and in that moment the whole family just crashed for a few moments, but we know we have only one way to get her out of there, and we just pressed every way for us to get her back.
Unfortunately, the images of Shani were seen across the world. That's an impossible trauma for a brother to go through.
It was so hard to actually see this brutality, even though in our countries we know that they can reach to this level of non-humanity. We knew it, unfortunately. So when I saw it, I wasn't so surprised, but I just feel like someone kicked my family just in the head, like they just spit on her and treat her like she's such a nothing. She means nothing for them. And actually, I don't want to put effort, energy inside it, because it's all hate. It's all hate, and hate are continuously to another hate and another hate, and it's a loop of hate. And this is why I don't put my energy in it. If I would put my energy in how they hurt us, I can lose myself in this war of feeling. And there is nothing we can do to actually pay for what they done. I had a feeling that she's maybe not with us, but we couldn't give up. We couldn't let this give up. And with how much it hurt, we got to keep moving. We got to get another piece of information.
But this week, a knock on the door, and news that a fragment of her skull had been found at the festival site. The family believes she was fatally shot in the head.
It's been, obviously, a horrendous few weeks. How are you right now?
When you see soldiers in the house, you know bad news is gonna come. So I had this feeling where I'm gonna get told something so bad, but in so many ways I feel good to know this, to know she's not there, not suffering anymore. And this was a really important part in the goodbye.
But one thing they cannot do yet is bury her.
Unfortunately, as a Jewish, we need something to bury, and we don't have enough particles to bury. I don't know if we're gonna wait for the body itself to come for us to bury it like it should be, or we just do some really memorial with the subject we have.
What are you thinking right now about the future of relations here?
The kids in Israel are not going to forget these few weeks. Every 13 years old kid opened the telegram and seeing every stuff his family or his friends of his family been through, and there is not enough psychologists to be in this event. There is not enough people
to cope.
Yeah, to cope for this.
What was she like as a person, and what did she mean to you as a brother?
She was artistic in every way, in the way she was talking, in the way she was moving, in the way she's danced. There was no dark side, only pure angel. And at least I know she went through this whole life without being a bad person for a second.
And it is her life, not the manner of her death, her friends and family once shared. Her joy, her wisdom, and her kindness. A spirit that will never leave them.
Joining us now, Director of the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, Ben Jamal. Hi, Ben. Good to see you on the programme this morning. Thank you for joining us. Every loss of life is a tragedy. Thoughts on what happened yesterday at the refugee camp?
Yeah, I mean, some of your viewers, I'm sure, would have seen some of the videos coming out of the camp. I apologise, Kay, I don't know if they've been shown on Sky News. I witnessed them myself on BBC News last night. They are horrific. 120 Palestinians killed, including many children. I'm finding hard to get out of my head the image of a father searching for the body of his 3 children amongst the rubble. And there is a danger that we become immune at the scale of what is happening because we become numb to the statistics. There are now over, just concentrating on children, since Israel began its bombardment, there are now over 3,500 children killed in Gaza, over 6,300 injured. That means 420 children a day are being killed or injured. A child is being killed every 10 minutes. That's maybe how we can try to make sense of this. But what we are also now dealing with, Israel has justified the attack on Jalabia on the basis that it killed a Hamas commander. So we are now being asked to accept, the international community has been asked to accept that Israel's developed a new model of proportionality that says it regards it as acceptable to kill a single Hamas commander, to kill more than 120 Palestinians, including children. This is unacceptable. And really the only human response to what's going on is to call for an immediate ceasefire.
Is it acceptable for Hamas to hide under refugee camps?
Well, this notion, and we see this argument being used, and I keep coming back to the framework of international law. We hear the phrase used, human shields. Human shields is defined in international law. It makes it clear it is illegal for someone deliberately to place civilians in harm, but it also makes it clear that you cannot use that term to justify attacking urban areas where there are densely populated areas where there are many civilians, on the basis that you need to do that in order to kill armed fighters who are there. So this is the issue. What is happening here? And we are being told also by Israel that this operation it's undertaken is going to increase casualties, that this may go on for 3 months. As I said, over 8,500 Palestinians killed, 3,500 children in just over 3 weeks. Are we expected to accept the argument that it is justified for Israel, in order, in its language, to destroy Hamas, to kill, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 Palestinians? When is the international community, when are our leaders going to say this is enough, this has to stop, the killing has to stop, we have to find the political solution, but there must be a ceasefire now?
Well, I ask British, UK politicians, both sides of the House, that question whenever I can, and they say that will not happen for now. There could be a humanitarian pause, but there will not be a ceasefire.
Well, they have moral agency, don't they? They can say that cannot happen as if they don't have the capacity to call for a ceasefire, and they do. So they are making a moral choice, and it's a basic moral test at the moment. And this is a test being failed by all of our main political leaders at the moment. Not everybody, but certainly the leaders of the Conservative Party, the Labour Party. I saw Keir Starmer's interview yesterday, and he was pressed repeatedly on the question. He kept referring to international law. When he was asked the question, well, is Israel violating international law? is this indiscriminate bombing that's killing civilians a violation of international law? He said, well, I can't judge that. I have to wait for that to be judged. He was asked the question, is it morally justified? He said, I can't judge that. I'll have to wait for an assessment of that from other people. When he was asked during the bombardment, during his Russia's invasion of Ukraine, whether the targeting of civilians was a war crime, he was able to say straightforwardly, yes, of course it is. He didn't need to wait. He didn't need to be told. He could make a moral and a legal judgment based on what was happening. That should be the same standard that's applied now. There is no moral justification not to call for a ceasefire, and our leaders have moral agency.
Can Israelis be safe while Hamas still operates?
Well, look, ultimately, we're going to have to find a political solution for this. And that means also addressing the fact that the clock didn't start ticking on this on October the 7th. So what, international law has to be the framework. What Hamas did on October the 7th, because it targeted and killed civilians, was a violation of international law. That needs to be dealt with within the framework of international law. And we need to deal with the root causes. Which, Keir Starmer himself addressed yesterday, but he didn't want to name them. And we need to name them. There's an ongoing military occupation. There is the imposition for decades of a system of oppression on the Palestinian people. And that needs to end. And that needs an entire shift in the way this has been dealt with for decades. Israel needs to be held accountable for its violations of international law, for the imposition of a system of military occupation. That's the framework within which we need to deal with it. And Hamas's actions need to be treated within the same framework of international law. That's the only standard we can apply. But what we're being asked to accept at the moment, that in order to justify its security, we have to stand by, not call for a ceasefire, while Israel kills tens of thousands of Palestinians, including thousands and thousands of children. At what point do we start to say this is actually an act of genocide? We have scholars of crimes against humanity are saying this is developing now as a test case of genocide. This has to stop. There has to be a ceasefire, and then there needs to be real energy, proper application of principles of international law and human rights to deal with the root causes of this situation.
Ben, we must leave it there, but thank you for taking the time to join us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
The last two, I think, were the most important two. And I think that's what the title of this pursuit is going to be, the loop of hate and the moral test. Because hearing the brother talk about what happened to his sister, and that seems mundane, not saying that is in any bad way, compared to some of the stories we've heard of what have happened, people being burnt, people being beheaded, tortured, raped, held hostage. It really, I know I'm an emotional person, but it really, seeing all this kind of stuff, hearing all this kind of stuff, this hate, either side, I'm seeing it as human beings. The tags that we put on ourselves, define it in a different way, but I'm seeing it as human beings doing this to human beings in plain sight of us all. We claim to be in a system of democracy, we claim to be in a system of fairness and truth and honesty and humanity, and yet I'm not seeing that from anyone who are the leaders. Like I say, many of these pursuits of truth, when you listen to the actual people, the actual people involved, you hear the emotion, you hear the passion, you hear the anger, you hear the anguish. But when you hear these world leaders, you don't hear any of those sounds, you don't hear any of that, you just hear words. Face value, that's it. Stoic, cold. And that's why it's not being sorted, because basically they're covering their eyes, covering their ears, and just letting it go on. This is an example of humanity and how humanity deals with humanity and deals with day-to-day life based on the system we live in. We're failing on all scales, all of them. Not everyone. The ones that have the tag of Hamas, who are did those terrible crimes, the massacre on October the 7th. And yet still have the audacity to then go back and take people back into Gaza with them, keep them hostage, threaten their lives. If they are standing, for the people of Gaza, for the people of Palestine, then they need to give themselves up and set the hostages free. Because them staying there, all they're doing is keeping themselves alive. They're not helping the Palestinians or the Gazans or the Muslims. Because how many, at the end of the day, when this is all over, how many of these Gaza people are there? 100, 200, maybe 1,000. When they're all dead, how many thousands will be dead of innocent people that they said they stood for? The tens of thousands, 20, 30, 40,000. And I know that's on Israel as well, for if that's what's going to happen in the future. But also they know that what they did is not going to bring peace. And based on the teachings they believe, if they believe in the Quran, if they believe in Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if they believe in Islam, they know that what they did was wrong and is not way justified. So what do they stand for? And Israel themselves as well, the Jewish members of Israel that read the Torah, we're all children of God. And yet we're killing each other. The siege of starving and, the people that must be dying now because they don't have water, the diseases and all these things because of this siege. And the Westerners, the Christians as well, who read their Bibles, who are just turning a blind eye to this and saying, that, you have to follow international law. When we know international law is being broken or it may need testing, but it looks like it is being broken. If normal civilians without education, with limited amount of knowledge of this can see that, this doesn't look right, or people talking about genocide, people talking about apartheid, people talking about, just normal people can realise that withholding food and water is wrong. You don't win a moral war by being immoral. Two wrongs don't make a right. We all know these things. We teach them to our children, and yet look at how the adults are behaving. This is just testament to the failure of humanity and the worst that we can do to each other, no matter which side you fall on. There's no hope here. There's no seeing a good side to humanity from any of this. It's just hate. That's what started all this. The hate inside because of the oppression, or the hate inside because of not liking one certain people because of they have this tag or that tag. Like we've seen that in history many times through different races and different religions throughout the human's history, of people despising and hating and killing people just because of the colour of their skin, or because the beliefs they hold, or the way they act, or the way they are. When a human being's going to evolve from this caveman instinct, this animal instinct of killing, of seeing each other like that? Why aren't we seeing each other that we're just human beings? All the other things is just man-made constructs we picked up along the way that, they're probably not benefiting us. And that's why I don't think we should have those things. I don't know, it's just... Take care, take it easy, God bless, and peace.